The Legend of Jimmy Spoon by Kristiana Gregory. Chapter 30, Indian Funeral. One cool, sunny day, a group of boys played battle games on their ponies, firing arrows into the air and into clumps of grass. When Jimmy saw the war chief's son crumble to the ground, he knew the playing had gotten out of hand. The boy had an arrow in his neck and blood poured from his mouth. He was dead. What crying followed! For 5 days every woman, man, and child wept in sympathy. It was a grave loss, not only for the war chief, but for the entire tribe. At first, Jimmy hid in the woods, trying to remove himself from the noise. But when he returned to camp, he found it wasn't the crying that bothered him. It was the sorrow behind it. He had liked the boy. A dull pain throbbed inside him, the exact pain he had felt when his sister Olivia died. Jimmy hadn't known what to do with the pain there, and he didn't know what to do with it now. The boy's mother cut off her braids and stabbed her thighs with a flint. She slashed her arms and pressed the blade against the last joint of her finger until the tip was cut off. Blood soaked her buckskin dress. 3 horses were killed to bury with the boy so he could ride to the happy hunting grounds. His body lay on a raised pallet in the center of camp, where everyone filed by, placing a hand on his head. "I am sorry you are leaving us," each said. The war chief carried the body of his son to a cliff and laid him in a crevice, covering him with a Bajono robe. Nearby he placed a bow and arrows, an axe, a skillet, and a pouch of ta'o. The father then closed the opening with rocks. On the beach below, hunters were burying the 3 horses. For the next 5 days, Jimmy tried to shut his ears to the most heartbreaking sound he'd ever heard, a mother weeping for a lost child. Not since Olivia's death had he heard such a wail. Jimmy was awed by this powerful feeling a mother had for her son. In the evening, while he lay watching the fire, he pictured his mother at the kitchen window looking out. Was she hoping Jimmy would ride into the yard any minute? Did she expect him ever to return? 2 weeks later, Washaki's band followed the Big Hole River until it met Beaverhead River and became the mighty Jefferson. The boys fished under warm blue skies. Bajono were plenty, but still thin from winter, so they grazed peaceably nearby. Jimmy was realizing he didn't need to kill for sport. Prairie grasses ruffled in the wind around the legs of the horses. Jimmy tamed 2 colts for Old Mother, 4 for Washaki. They broke camp and traveled northeast for a week to the North Fork of the Madison River, bordering what would one day become Yellowstone National Park. Jimmy was fascinated by the geysers and the boiling color pots. Great herds of elk and antelope wandered as far as he could see. There were too many Bajono to count. One morning, several women with their children rode near a stream to gather cattail down. A girl about 3 years old sat atop a pony, tied securely within the saddle's high pommel and cantle. A hiss from the brush drew the mother's attention, but not before the pony reared up. A rattlesnake launched itself at the horse, which whinnied in panic and began running, the child still strapped to its back. As it ran toward the prairie, a cluster of Bajono sniffed the air. Heads raised, dust rose beneath their hooves as they too began running. The pony raced them. As it drew alongside, the herd shrank back to make room. The pony moved into the gap and was soon lost to sight as the others closed around it. Mozo was leading Jimmy, Nampa, and Gamu on a hunt when they heard the stampede and tried to head it off. The Bajono were so close, Jimmy could feel the wind from their running, and he could see the whites of their frightened eyes. The ground thundered under their hooves, drowning out the screams of the mother and her friends. They could see the little girl's braids flying out from the sides of her face as she bounced away. There was nothing Jimmy could do to help. He knew the pony wouldn't be able to keep up. With a heavy heart, he watched the girl disappear. So many shaggy backs spreading like a shadow over her and the horse. 10 minutes later, the herd had passed and was now thinning into the distance. The boys rode toward the women, and Mozo led the distraught mother away to keep her from seeing what had happened to her daughter. This time, Jimmy joined the days of mourning. For once he was not embarrassed to cry in front of friends. He wept with a force that surprised him, as if his heart had split open and poured out every hidden sorrow. He cried for the little girl and for what a child's death meant to all mothers. Jimmy cried for Olivia. He cried for the anguish his own mother must be feeling. When he saw Old Mother with the circle of grieving women, Jimmy remembered her loss, 2 sons, a daughter, a husband, and his heart felt the deepest ache of all. The band journeyed 90 miles up the Madison River, where they camped for a month. Bajono were now fat enough to hunt, and the cycle of making ta'o and new robes began again. As the moon waxed full, they returned to their summer campground at Henry's Lake. Jimmy fished under sunny skies and billowy white clouds. And that's the end of chapter 30.